Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Finca San Isidro Wash Process Colombia from Sniite Coffee. There's the cup right there. And Sniite, based out of Tokyo, Japan. And I'm currently at a park nearby their only location in Setagaya, which does make us 3 for 3 at recording these videos inside of Tokyo parks. And truth be told, this is by far my least favorite of the 3 parks, as I've had multiple recordings interrupted by either ambulances, cicadas, or yet another helicopter, so I'm going to try to power through this review as best as I can. A couple of notes about this coffee roaster. They were suggested to me by the people over at Onibus, as apparently the roaster used to also work at Onibus, and a very small world sort of thing is that we were at the exact same cupping at La Marzocco about 5 years ago in Seattle, Washington, so I found that to be pretty interesting. One other quick note I wanted to add was that they also requested we not record any video inside of the shop since there were other customers there. And that's likely going to be a theme inside of these coffee shops in Japan, as it sounds like they don't want you to record inside if there are other customers there. So I will happily respect their wishes. Unfortunately, it means that we will likely not have a whole lot of video footage inside of the shops, but I will try to take some photos to add to these reviews as well. Now, when it comes to the coffee itself, I did find it to be pretty interesting as I asked the barista for his top suggestion. And the top coffee he picked was my top pick as well. And I was so interested in that coffee that I decided to purchase a full bag of it, and I will be reviewing that one. So I actually asked him for his second pick, and he picked my second choice as well, which is this Colombian coffee, as it is a pink bourbon. So I was very interested in that, and it sounds like me and the barista have pretty similar tastes in coffee. And then the last note I wanted to add about it is that they roast on the Diedrich, which is really promising because now we've had 2 coffee roasters that roast on the Probat and one that roasts on the Diedrich, a couple of my favorite coffee roasting machines. Now, the profile of this coffee itself is actually quite similar to Onibus, as it is on the lighter side of things. A lot of these coffees have been lighter relative to my previous experiences with Japanese-based coffee roasters, which is also very promising, and it's been very interesting that a majority of them offer more wash-processed coffees. So it feels like a couple of years ago, back when I enjoyed the coffee scene a little bit more than it is now. So all of that has been really positive, and they offered any of their current offerings as a pour-over option. So this coffee right here was brewed with the V60. I do believe that they offer a drip offering. However, they didn't have any as of this moment. So this works well for me. I honestly probably would have picked this coffee unless it was their drip offering. So let's go ahead and start discussing it. And what I experienced from this coffee was a lot of classic pink bourbon characteristics, as it was reminiscent of Kenyan coffees, as hopefully the wind first off doesn't ruin the audio too bad. But yes, the first thing I noticed was a lot of Kenyan-like characteristics too, as it had some kind of bright tart berry aspects. So the notes they have listed on here most notably were grape, as well as, I'm actually spacing on the other note, peach. And more for me, I was experiencing tart berry aspects, so maybe a little bit more currants, red raspberry, some darker currants in general. In addition to that, the stone fruit quality was a little bit more on the jammy side of things, so a little bit more reminiscent of apricots as opposed to maybe like a true peach aspect to it. And then they noted a sweet, lasting finish. And I do have to say this coffee is quite well layered, as the sweetness does come a little bit more on the back end following those more savory aspects. But that being said, they do have a juicy note listed on here, which can indicate some Kenyan-like characteristics, as I am experiencing a fair bit of Kenyan-like characteristics to this one, which will be demonstrated in the tasting wheel. So I'll go ahead and put up that tasting wheel right now so you can't see what we're getting. Right, and of course, I do have my notes right over here, so let's take a look. And we do have quite a few level 4s. Let's go through those, and we will start with the cleanliness, level 4. Yes, we have a washed Colombian coffee, so I was fully expecting it to reach that level 4 unless we were experiencing some more developed qualities to it. Once again, this coffee being on the slightly lighter side of things, I was looking at the wrong page. Cleanliness, level 4 nonetheless. Given that it was on the slightly lighter side of things, not necessarily a bit of smokiness, so that's why it definitely offered a fair bit of clarity in general. And there was pretty nice definition to those more tart berry-like aspects within this coffee, so credit to them in that regard. I feel like the profile on this one was very clean. Finish, level 4. Yes, and it does have some more of those kind of lasting, I would say, tart aspects to it, but also in a candied sense, as that was the first thing I noticed, was that this coffee came out maybe a little bit more sweet than I was initially expecting, even though they did list that there was going to be a fair bit of sweetness in the finish to this one. It definitely lived up to that expectation, so credit to them in that regard as well. You can see that demonstrated with a level 4 in terms of the sweetness, as this one did offer a fair bit of, I'll actually say, candied sweet qualities to it in a fruit sense. So really enjoyed that part of this coffee. And then the acidity, also at a level 4. Yes, and typically with pink bourbon coffees, I do experience a fair bit of brightness, and this one did offer that, which is a nice little kind of, we'll say, component to the roast profile of this one, as it is, as mentioned, a little lighter than I was initially expecting, on par once again with that Onibus coffee. So interesting in that regard. And then we're going to go ahead, keep getting eaten by mosquitoes as well. We're going to go ahead and discuss the fruit qualities and berry fruit level 4. Yes, so once again, they do have a grape note listed on here, but for me, it was a little bit more in these kind of red fruit aspects, these berry aspects to it. But I could definitely see a fair bit of that in that regard, so level 4 seemed to fit quite well for me. Citrus fruit, level 4. Yes, and typically when I experience those more kind of tart characteristics to it, there's a little bit of this kind of candied lemon sense to it, and that was demonstrated here within this coffee as well, as I was experiencing a fair bit of that. Then we have a handful of level 3s. We'll start with the florality, level 3. That's kind of interesting, because initially I would say that there was a little bit more of a kind of savory herbal aspect, reminiscent of what I like to describe as hibiscus in this one. As it cools off, it's not quite as present or pronounced within the coffee itself, but other than that, level 3 does seem quite fitting for this coffee. Stone fruit level 3. Honestly, I was hoping for maybe a little bit more peachiness to this one, but it didn't necessarily offer that in as much abundance as I was expecting. There's definitely a little bit more of that kind of candied, sweeter, jammy stone fruit regard. So I would say that's the apricot, which I'd kind of mentioned. And now we're also getting interrupted by some bells, but we're going to continue to power through this review. And then the caramel, also at a level 3, which I've already kind of mentioned, is the candied aspect of this coffee. Couple of other level 3s, the savoriness, it does offer a fair bit of those Kenyan-like attributes to it. And then the body at a level 3, as it's a little bit more medium bodied than I might have expected. Well, actually, I did expect it to have a little bit of body, so medium body does seem to fit quite well into this. But as I am looking at this tasting wheel, I do think that's a pretty good representation of what I was getting from this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. This one definitely also exceeded my expectations, and as of this moment, with the exception of maybe not necessarily the best experience at Switch, I've had some pretty positive experiences with the coffees themselves, as they've been well above my expectations. This is another one, and I'm really grateful that this one was suggested to me by the people at Onibus, because I'd never heard of this coffee roaster before they suggested it to me, which was, what, an hour, 2 hours ago now, so this is a little bit of a hidden gem. I feel like they're going to be a coffee roaster that hopefully will make a bigger name for itself here in the near future, as it seems like they're quite popular here in Japan itself, but a lot of people don't necessarily know about them. And this one being a lighter profiled, more modern coffee and offering a lot of the characteristics that I look for in it: clarity, sweetness, as well as a nice fruit profile and even some floral aspects to it, was very positive. So I do have a lot of appreciation for this one. And that kind of leads into the type of person I would suggest this to. And that is going to be your lighter profiled pink bourbon drinker, which I know on the face of it seems like a pretty generic description, but it was really well done in that regard. Like the candied aspect of it from the Diedrich, I feel like really seemed to help this one kind of stand out when compared to some of the other pink bourbon coffees I've had in the past. In addition to that, some great definitions. The profile of this one was also really nice. And then obviously, as somebody that enjoys lighter profiled coffees, this one seemed to offer all of those things in notable abundances. I think that this one was a very well done coffee to begin with. So keep in mind a lot of those aspects, as I think this is the best direction I can point you towards and the best way I can leave this review. Sounds like I got through it. If you by chance had any coffee from Sniite, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it or them as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Finca Isidoro wash process Colombia from Sniite Coffee. Thank you for watching.